You ever do CPR on a corpse, basically knowing it was futile, but you were required to do it? Yeah. Hey, good morning, Suburban Prepper. Driving into work for my Friday, doing a little live stream. Just thinking about the times I've done CPR, working in the intensive care unit on someone who was basically already dead. They were pumped full of pressors just to keep their heart with some cardiac output. And pumping them full of fluids too, only to take the fluids back to keep volume status is all for nothing. Done that on more times than I can care to count. During the wars, CPR in a combat, senseless. Back of a Toyota pickup truck, doing compressions on an Afghan soldier. Just hoping, doing it till we can reach the NA medical compound and let them handle it, knowing deep well that by nightfall that guy's going to be buried a couple feet under anyway. Just a waste of resources, putting ourselves at risk. For nothing. Hey, Suburban Prepper here. How's everybody going today? It's a good Friday. No complaints. I'm talking about doing CPR today, or the futility of CPR. The futility of it, I should stress. Because unless that EMS is taking you to a hospital where there's a cardiac cath lab, an ICU with pressors, defibrillators, it's usually futile in adults anyway. Cardiac pulmonary resuscitation. Yeah, it's a good skill to learn, but most instances it's a situation. If it's too late, it's too late. Nothing you're going to do about it. Sure as hell, in a combat zone, you're not going to sit there for 1 minute and do CPR before you move the patient. That's why I like Move Under Fire, the change in philosophy on how we take care of wounded now. As that medic, you don't want to get unalive pressing on somebody's chest when there's nothing that could really be done. And by the time when shit just chills, it's already too late. The damage is already done. Even that battalion aid station doesn't have an ICU bed, much less an ICU code team to handle it. A PA and a handful of medics, as good as they are, isn't an ICU team. And that's just the harsh reality of it. There's no way you can have all that gear at a infantry battalion aid station. And much less a medical company in support of a brigade. God, they're not going to have that. Yeah. So here we are. Thinking about how shit hit the fan and people thinking CPR is going to save lives, how mistaken that they're going to be. You know, as a prepper, and as a medical person, I like to be realistic in what I say and what I do. And CPR is useless when shit hits the fan. No sense in doing it. Do something that's more worthwhile. not CPR. I'm working on a CPR video about this exact situation, and the few times I've done it in the back of a ambulance, in the back of a white Toyota pickup truck, just to know that once we take them to the next echelon of care, they're just going to stop anyway. It's completely futile. So, I mean, think about it. In an ICU, okay, intensive care unit, you've got one highly qualified, but you don't start working in the ICU until you have experience. New graduates shouldn't work in the ICU because they're still too stupid. But anyway, they do. And they don't know how to manage time. But let me back up. You have eventually one or two. You're monitoring their cardiac level. You're monitoring their blood pressure. You're monitoring their blood constantly, blood sugar. You're monitoring their mean arterial pressure. All these things that you just look at, and you have different drips that you can adjust to titrate that. You're monitoring their urine output. You can get an instant wait because of the bed. Those patients, you can even do bedside dialysis as an RN. None of that you could do on a battlefield. And I'm skipping a bunch of stuff too. Okay, patients on ventilators. How you can the vent setting will help the patient breathe. Will help the patient draw fluid out of their lungs. None of that can happen, really, in a combat zone. Now, I never really worked in a medical hospital unit in the military. I don't really know how their ICUs are set up, but one thing I do know about the military is they're always primitive. And it's always two steps back. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, the equipment's rugged and durable, but it's two steps back from what the civilians are doing. Okay? That's why when you have military guys like me that were medical providers in the civilian side and medics in the guard side of the house, we sort of just blew everybody away because we knew what to do. Two steps back. Anyway, doing CPR on the battlefield, it's not heroic. It potentially puts that medic at risk to die. Or that combat lifesaver, or that grunt, whoever's doing CPR thinking they're going to help. Because you're just a target right there and there. As a prepper, when shit hits the fan, and in any event, if there's a real bad situation and the hospitals are overwhelmed, things get triaged. And coding somebody, code is when somebody's heart stops beating, okay? Or a variant thereof, when they go into VTAC or VFib, or asystole. But coding somebody requires a ton of resources. One code can go through 2 crash carts. Those crash carts are the carts that you see along the side in intensive care units, but has all the equipment and gear that you need right away. And you have to know where everything is in that crash cart, and it has to be updated constantly. Well, the pharmacy would update the medicine, and the nurses would really just make sure that the code defibrillator was functioning. None of that could happen during shit hitting the fan, okay? Any hospital that you have could be overwhelmed. And when hospitals get overwhelmed, they have to start triaging. the worst, you have to just let some people go. And the people that have the lowest risk of survival are the ones that usually have to go. It sounds harsh. It is harsh, but it's for the better good of survival. Okay? Well, I'm saying don't learn CPR. Learn American Heart CPR. That's the best one. I used to teach CPR for Red Cross because I didn't know better. And I used to teach it to my unit in the Army. And I used to volunteer teaching CPR in the community where I lived in when I was a soldier. When I was there, not deployed or on a mission somewhere. I enjoyed teaching CPR. I enjoyed interacting with people. Well, I volunteered for it. I mean, I loved it. Actually went on a couple of dates because of that. It was great. I was a young single man then, a stud, doing my thing. I even got a nice plaque for volunteering for 6 years with the Savannah American Red Cross. And that plaque meant something to me. Anyway. But I also learned that doing chest compressions on someone that's already got a wound. Think about it. They've already had, you're doing chest compressions on somebody, they've already got an injury that they've lost so much blood that their heart has stopped. Or there's some blunt force trauma to their heart that it stopped working. Be it a severe cardiac tamponade, shock. I am not going out in there and dying like that motherfucker. Sorry. Guy cut off. The guy went to the other lane to get to the turning lane. And for what? So he could get in a wreck and die? It just took 5 seconds, and I did. Anyway, I just lost all my viewers talking about the traffic. You're not here for traffic weather on the nights. So no, I would not do CPR. It should hit the fan. You just walk away. But Patrick, I have a lot of medical gear. I have ET tubes. I have CombiVent tubes. I even have a portable ventilator machine. But I know what the hell I'm doing. And that's just a last ditch effort. I hope this person doesn't cross the street. But it's not his time. Okay, good. The one thing I'm at a loss sometimes when it comes to this. Well, folks, enough about CPR. Okay. Let's talk about another component of care, something that you can do. It should hit the fan. And you want to save someone's life. Blunt chest trauma, tension pneumothorax, hemopneumothorax. Hemopneumothorax. Basically, from here on up. Now, the type of injuries, blunt chest trauma that can occur are, I've described the injuries involving the lungs and the pleural cavities. A cardiac tamponade, when the heart gets injured, it starts to bleed around the heart, and the heart quits pumping effectively. That's a hard one to diagnose right away. The treatment's even harder. You got to have a long needle, and you got to take that blood out. And you got to have an EKG actually hooked up to that needle to check the rhythm. It's not something you can really do unless you're in an ER setting or a pre-surgical setting. But for a pneumothorax, okay, a chest wound, there's several things you can do. One, look at the patient's rise and fall of the chest. Talk to the patient. If they're having difficulty breathing, and you know that if they're having difficulty breathing for any other reason, and there's some trauma going on, you suspect tension. So check for an entry and exit wound. If there's a hole here, that's where these chest seals come in. And you wipe it down, dry it, put the chest seal on. And what'll happen is that'll help restore slowly, of course, give the lung the room to expand and breathe, or not make it any worse. If you want to remove some of that air right away, you use that 14 or 12 gauge needle with a catheter, stick it in the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. I'm sorry, not mid-axillary. Right here, basically. Middle of the clavicle, second intercostal space. And that's where you do a needle decompression. Chest tubes basically go in the mid-axillary line, right here. In between the, I think it's fourth intercostal space. Basically, when you put a chest tube in somebody, you're going in between the meat of a rib and the bone, opening it up, sticking a tube in there to drain out the contents, which it can be filled with blood or air, pus, depending on what the reason why they developed a pneumothorax, or tension pneumothorax, or hemothorax. Go ahead, sweetheart. You have the right of way. Go ahead. I love you. Go ahead, sweet tits. There you go, little man. Illinois driver. Anyway, so hemopneumothorax is blood and air. You stabilize them and hopefully ship them up to higher echelon of care, which would be an emergency room. Urgent care isn't going to do any more than what you could have done anyway. If you even knew what the hell I'm talking about with a needle decompression or a chest seal. And then the thing that people overlook all the time is check for the exit wound in the back, or check for an exit wound period somewhere. Yeah, some bullets, when someone gets shot, they go right through them. Those are actually the good ones. The bad ones are once they hit the skin or the body, they start tumbling around. And those are the ones that just kill you. Like the hollow points. But those are good in a way because they stay in the body, they don't go anywhere else and cause further damage to the environment. Which leads into my 9mm video that I'm working on. I'm going to take my CZ Scorpion out to the gun range this weekend. Now, the CZ Scorpion, it's considered a personal defense arm. Okay. Now, some people have red dots. I don't do red dots. I don't like them. I like to have a little magnification when I'm shooting, even on my CZ Scorpion. So that's that. And no, when I shoot at the gun range, I'm shooting full metal, 9mm. I'm not getting expensive ammo. I'm going to have fun. And I'm going to go over my CZ Scorpion. And I'm excited. I'm so excited. So this intersection that I stop at all the time, if I know I'm going to be late if it's past 7:30 or it's 7:27, so I'm going to come in early at work today. I know again. As soon as I get there, it's like chaos. Just chaos. As soon as I step in the door, patient will show up unannounced, demanding I fill out some paperwork because their ass couldn't get in there during the week and just wait half an hour in between patients or wait a couple hours or drop off the form and say, hey, can I come pick this up later? I need it so-and-so. But no, they'll come in Friday saying they need this form for work that same day. Well, I have patients to see all day, and I can't meet those kind of demands. So be it. Back to my, I'm a rambling man today, ain't I? Rambling man. All right, I'm a guy, okay? Guy, I grew up watching professional wrestling in the 80s and in the 90s, the early 2000s. Then I'd say I quit watching wrestling after probably 2008. Just when I started grad school to be a nurse practitioner, I just didn't watch much of anything anymore. But back in those days, when I did watch, I watched some of the later on in the career, American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, who often battled with Dusty Rhodes. Later on was Lex Luger, the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, and various iterations of it. One of the local NWA wrestling tag teams that I really loved enjoying. Now they weren't that great, but God, they had some charisma. The Rock and Roll Express. I mean, don't think the dude weighed over 200 pounds. I don't know. They weren't that powerful, but they knew how to work a crowd. Sort of like how Shawn Michaels, later he was part of Gen X or D-Generation X back in the 90s, which was him and Hunter Hearst, Triple H, China, all of them are from Gen X, which of course I'm a Gen Xer. But Shawn Michaels, of course, wasn't that big of a fella either. I mean, he's pretty short and skinny, muscular, don't get me wrong. They knew how to do that good kick. But you got to realize something, that the damage that most of the time what they did to each other was just completely fake. I mean, they practiced and rehearsed. We're told they practice these moves just to give a good show. But if they really did that shit to each other in real life, people wouldn't be walking anymore. There's a few instances where wrestlers will pick somebody up and drop them on their head and really damage them. But most of the time, when they do that, they're just going through the motions. They're not really doing the whole thing. And then you have the one guy with the puppet, the one guy with the fake, the hand that looks like pretend it's a snake. And then Undertaker, how he would do his one thing here, pick you up and throw you down. And I guess that was it for the Undertaker. That's how the Undertaker did it. And then you had the professional The Olympian wrestlers who wrestled freestyle or different iterations of Olympic wrestling, like what we did in high school, that would join the wrestling leagues. And their only issue was they knew how to skill wrestle and they knew how to brawl, but they lacked some personality, with the exception of that one Olympic guy that WWE, WWF. He's bald now and he's a little goofy, but he knew he was. But some of these Olympian wrestlers just had the worst personalities, and it's a show. And you want to put on a good show. And it's a competition of who can put on a better show. Anyway, it has nothing to do with being a prepper. It has everything to do with being an American, remembering those good old days. I remember when, back in the 90s, 95, 96 era time frame, when the New World Order was coming about. And like, who the hell are these people? And Hulk Hogan joined the New World Order and became Hollywood. Hulk Hogan, all this, and the Outsiders, Kevin, the one guy's dead now. Kevin Nash. Anyway, no, Lex Luger can hardly walk anymore because something happened to him. Wrestling announcers, they've all had strokes of some type or serious neurological deficits from injuries where they can't really function. And you see them at these on YouTube where they're just signing off promotions. Yeah. Saturn, he was an Army guy, a Ranger, became a professional wrestler, and he sort of looked so sad and pathetic just sitting there. Nobody was going up to him, getting his autograph. Like, and it's sad because, you know, their handlers tell them what personality, or basically, and I don't know, maybe that's his personality, I don't know. But I mean, it's the guys that, you know, you may not have liked them, but they had more personality, that were more popular, even if they weren't really well liked in pretend land. Like Hulk Hogan's nemesis in the 80s and 90s, guy that wore the dress a lot. What was his name? Scottish guy. He was in that movie about the aliens that had faces and they had to wear the glasses. The name escapes me. And he passed away, of course. By the way, he was a bad guy, but he was a good guy because he had personality. He used to have a talk show back in the 80s on when WWF was on. Roddy Piper. And he had a show called Roddy's Corner. And it would be, he'd interview other wrestlers. And then it would end up, he would just beat them up. And it was so funny and very entertaining. He knew how to sell it to the crowd. And he wasn't that big of a guy. Wasn't that tall. But he knew how to sell it. He had that personality. Like Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I saw him early on, trying to form create who he was. And he became Triple H. And it worked good for him. Stone Cold Steve Austin, before he hit his big prime as Stone Cold, he had some long hair. And you could tell there was something eking to get out of him, because that facade that he was putting on with the other wrestler, the tag team, who just didn't work. He shaved all his hair off, put on that leather jacket. Did the biblical quote. He took off. And these guys have careers after professional wrestling, just being general baddies on different channels. And then the theme music of some of these wrestlers, I mean, you could just, very militaresque and heart-chomping and beautiful. I mean, if you could pick your theme song, all right, so everywhere you go, that theme song would play. What would that theme song be? It doesn't have to be, it could be a spoken word. It would be whatever. Makes you think about it. Ric Flair's theme song got so popular, okay, that they started playing it at college and high school graduations. And I mean, that's true. I'm like, wow, I did not know that. Now, Ric Flair was a player, and he was more of a brawler, smaller than, I met him in a bar in Savannah, Georgia, at a place called Malone's. I just spoke to him for a minute. He acknowledged you as a human being. I mean, the guy he wasn't an asshole. You know, some guys they don't want to talk to you. I didn't ask for his autograph or anything. It was not like I'm seeking it or anything. Yeah, cool. Station here. Yeah. Have a good night. You too. It was during the week. We had just gotten back from a mission somewhere. It was time to go out and have a little bit of fun. And I guess they had a wrestling event that night. And I guess the Four Horsemen were out having a little something going on, a little drinking, whatever. So, but I don't know. Well, folks, it's 7:40. Probably 10 minutes out from my job. And I've got, as soon as I get in there, it's going to be, oh yeah, can you do this? Oh yeah, can you do that? I haven't really watched a wrestling event, God knows how long. I try to watch the one on Turner now, or whatever channel it's on. It's not the NWA. Oh no, there is NWA. The new National Wrestling Alliance, that's owned now by the one guy that he was a singer for that 90s alternative music group. I think he's saying that despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage. Tonight to that song. I don't remember. Who was it? He always looked a little pale, but he runs the NWA now. And I've always loved the NWA before they became WCW. To me, the NWA was like that local wrestling, like Ohio Valley wrestling. And I like that it's smaller, not as big as WWE or WWF or AEW. I mean, what are the big ones now? It's WWE. That's the most national one now, isn't it? I haven't watched the WWE I don't even know what channel it's on anymore. I heard there's some channel on some wrestling program now on Netflix or something. And I'm going to watch it anyway. Like I am. I'm not. I don't even know who any of these wrestlers are anymore. But on the older ones, the older wrestlers that are on the lower tier programs now, because they're not as popular and they're older and they've got more gray, I know who the hell these people are. Like Sting. Sting's in his 60s now, okay? But he's on this wrestling show. He still wears his makeup. 60-year-old in great shape. Get nothing against the guy. Sting has been around since the 80s. And then Dusty Rhodes, he's passed away since, but his children who've become wrestlers. And I don't know if their children are wrestlers now. I don't know. I didn't really follow it that much. But I will say that his children, they all have such beautiful sets of hair. If you look at the Rhodes family and that beautiful hair that they all have. Of course, I'm a bald motherfucker. My God. And then Ric Flair, had one son that wrestled and did drugs and died. And a daughter that wrestles, I think. I don't know that Hogan's kids wrestled at all. They became too Hollywood, I think. And I don't know what became of the Hart Foundation. Oh. If there's any wrestlers left, patriarchy or matriarchy from the Hart Foundation, the Canadian wrestlers. I don't know. Anyway, the only wrestling I watch is whatever comes on my stream on YouTube. And it's like the old stuff where it's the guys talking about the old days kind of stuff, about events that happened and the behind the scenes kind of stuff. And like, yes, it came to my head now. Goldberg. He was in WC. Oh, I better get going.